A warm welcome to the Innovations Against Poverty conference. We gather here in Stockholm, and welcome to those of you watching online as well and following. We know we have viewers from Maputo, we have viewers from Kenya and in Tanzania, so you're all very warm welcome from wherever you are, or if you're watching this later as well. The objective for the conference is to share the learnings from the first 18 months of Innovations Against Poverty and to discuss with a broader audience about inclusive business. The agenda therefore has a mix of our own speakers from the team, from Sida and from external guest speakers as well, with Oxfam, with the Stockholm Resilience Center, as well as Daudu Were from Kenya and Ushahidi, who will be telling us about how to scale up a platform and an innovation. It's a very fantastic, inspiring story, which you will find out about later. All presentations are available to download after this conference as well. So you can just go to the Business Innovation Facility. We have an event page there. So all the material is there. And you have right outside, you also find some printed material, which you can also download. Or if you're watching from elsewhere, these are possible to also order from Sida's publication database, if you just go to the sida.se website. So without much further ado, I'd like to welcome our first guest on stage. I don't think Oxfam needs a lot of introduction as an organization, but this part of Oxfam is the Enterprise Development Program, which has been running for about 5 years. And we're very pleased that Hugo Sintes could join us today. We started having a conversation with Oxfam about how we can start exchange some learnings with this program back in summer. Caroline Ashley was part of that conversation. And so we're very pleased to have Hugo Sintes, who's the manager of Enterprise Development.
Can we try that this is working? It is. Thank you. Okay. So thanks so much for the invitation. Thanks to Innovation Against Poverty and Sida for the opportunity to come and here and talk to you all. Sometimes people take a few minutes, the first few minutes while I talk, to try to figure out where I am from. What's that accent? I'm from Spain. From the islands, Minorca. I've been with Oxfam for about 5 years now. I always find it very humbling to come and talk before so many business people like yourselves. I'll just try to share some of the experiences that we have in Oxfam. I am privileged actually in my work that I meet and work with many business people like yourselves, both like organizations that we work with, invest in, and then a lot of the supporters that we have as well, with which we have a very close relationship as well. Yeah, you might be wondering what is Oxfam doing here to talk about enterprise. Why Oxfam and enterprise? Actually, that was the question that my parents asked when I quit the family business about 10 years ago. Neither of them could sleep for 3 days, thinking that I would actually go and take back the family business. And they were thinking, all this investment in training and MBAs and all this thing, and what a waste to go and work for a non-governmental organization. Actually, now probably they can't sleep either, but with the excitement, actually. What they do is supporting small businesses in Spain, and they really feel very close and identified with the work that we do supporting businesses in other parts of the world. And business is an international language, and a lot of the challenges faced by companies in Europe are similar to those that organizations in other parts of the world face. And we can talk about some of the similarities and differences later on if you have questions. Why Oxfam as well, an enterprise? I think Oxfam is an enterprise. Actually, many of you, if you've been to the UK, we actually run 700 shops, which make about $140 million sales a year, the profits of which goes to our programs. We consider ourselves a very innovative organization as well in our business work, and not only in our business work. In our business work, for example, we started selling second-hand books through our shops, and this is now the largest distributor of second-hand books in the whole of Europe. Our innovation also goes in other parts of the world. We're very known for the work we do on humanitarian response. We supported about 20 million people in the last 10 years, where there were crises or earthquakes, others. A few years ago, we developed a small bucket, a white bucket known as the Oxfam bucket, which is very resistant. It's the perfect tool to take to a situation where you need access to water. We do other things as well, innovation, enterprise, emergencies. Oxfam believes that there's a structural root to poverty, and therefore we take on other dimensions of development as well. Gender injustice is a key barrier to development in particular, and that's an important area of work for Oxfam, working to support women's economic, political, social opportunities, freedom of violence, but also the work we do around essential services, education, health, and also increasing, improving transparency and governance and working with civil society as well. But let me tell you a bit more about the work we do on enterprise development in particular. We've set up 2 initiatives in the last 5 years, actually. One, which is the Enterprise Development Program on your left-hand side, which I will tell you more about today. And then another one called a Small Enterprise Impact Investment Fund, which has just been set up, opened this year, actually. I'll start with the one on the right-hand side. This is actually a commercial proposition. So this is an opportunity for people that want to invest their money in a vehicle that will actually invest in small and medium enterprises across Africa and Asia mainly. So this is run not by Oxfam, but by a professional fund manager called Symbiotics. And Oxfam supports this fund by providing impact assessment, advice, branding, and fundraising, among others. This is an initiative I can tell you a bit more about. We have a colleague called Nicholas Koloff who is here tomorrow. If some of you want have a few questions, we can pass. I can pass them to him and get back to you. The initiative that I will tell you more about is this Enterprise Development Program. What we do here is actually take on very small early-stage enterprises which are not ready for an investment solution only. And they might need a lot of coaching, support, and grants, actually, for the first few years of development to be able to develop themselves as a business. So we're talking about enterprises with 0 to maximum $250,000 sales, with normally very low levels of paid staff. But despite those conditions, Oxfam has decided to take an investment approach. So we actually support these businesses in many ways, but also with investment, which is an innovative thing that Oxfam hasn't been doing until now, which is actually to provide investment alongside grants to these businesses. So what do we do actually in the Enterprise Development Program? Well, we identify, nurture, and invest in small and medium early stage enterprises. We have identified SMEs, small and medium enterprises, as a critical tool for poverty reduction and economic growth. People talk about the missing middle. You, I'm sure, have all heard about that. Micro enterprises managing to get some access to microfinance, and large businesses managing to get access to large loans or others, but that leaves a space in the middle, which is these small and medium enterprises that find it very difficult to access finance. These are the main employers in developed countries, SMEs, and we believe that they're a key tool for development in developing countries as well. As I was mentioning earlier, within this space, this particular program takes on what we call probably the toughest enterprises to invest in. Enterprises that are very new, which are quite remote. We're talking about enterprises in 500 or 1,000 kilometers from the capitals of countries like Tanzania, Ethiopia, Nepal, or other, quite rural, remote, and also working on agriculture. Agriculture is quite a high-risk sector as well. You know, rains don't come, or they come, and your product is there or is not. And yet, it's such an important sector for poor people to be able to engage in the economy and take advantage of their existing assets and opportunities as well. So how do we do it? Well, actually, we have set up actually a system through which we filter and scan through Oxfam's presence in 60 countries. So every year, all the countries where Oxfam operates will be identifying, analyzing business opportunities in the rural communities where they are, and passing them on through an investment committee and a board which has people not only from Oxfam, but also experts from outside Oxfam helping us identify which businesses have the highest potential, both economic and social. How we support them, loan finance, that is critical. That's the key innovation of this program for Oxfam. As I say, we do provide lending. Mainly we provide loans. It's not easy to provide equity at this level, and we can talk about that more later if you have questions. But critically, we have to support these enterprises with capacity development as well. In our model, for every $1 that we invest, we put at least $1 in grants for business capacity development. That might go to pay the salary of the key manager, accounting person, marketing person for the first few years. And we do not think that the company is able to repay that in the medium term, and yet without those key posts, the enterprise will not be able to flourish. So that is financed by grants. Similar with some costs that need to be subsidized, like additional market research to pilot a particular element, or critical also for us is mentoring. We really believe in the role that experienced people can play in supporting the businesses, and that is also grant funded. And then we have another element, which are social grants. We believe that many of the businesses will not be necessarily reducing poverty by default. They need to do it by design. That means that they may need to take on additional activities to make sure that poorer people can benefit, like providing literacy courses for farmers in the community, so that women feel more empowered to come to the company and sell their product. That's an example, but there's many others as well. So after 4 or 5 years, how have we done? Well, this is our portfolio a bit all over the world. We have 17 companies we have supported and invested in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Most of them, as I was saying, agriculture or agribusinesses. Let me give you an example of a company in Tanzania. It's actually 5 separate enterprises which are processing a plant called sisal. Sisal is a plant, and you use the fiber to make carpets or baskets. And what the enterprises do is actually they got hold of a new piece of equipment, technology that we helped finance, called a raspadora, which is a Portuguese word, which basically means that it's making some extraction of the plant to be able to say the sisal, some primary processing. These 5 companies are doing very well, selling about $3,000 a month with about 27% operating profits, only after 3 years of supporting them. Another key innovation in this project, apart from the technology, was the partnership set up with a key buyer called Katani, which is the one actually lending some of the technical assistance and also offering to buy the products as well. It's always good to share examples of projects that don't go so well, and we have many of those as well, or some of those, definitely. We call them red. We have the green ones and the red ones, and we have the amber ones. In terms of red ones, we supported a pharma enterprise in Liberia, which after 3 years is still not selling much. The problem there was that actually it was very poor infrastructure. So a lot of the work in the first few years went into building the dams, improving irrigation, getting technical assistance down to farmers. And all the farmers, and that's 1,500 of them, have actually doubled their yields. That's a fantastic outcome from a livelihoods perspective, but that increase in yields they're using to feed their families. That's not enough for them to be able to start trading. So the enterprise is there, but there's not enough flow for them to really make it into a viable business yet. And so that is one that at this point we're actually deciding to not continue funding until there's a clearer picture of what the solution is, whether it's a traditional livelihood or enterprise development. How am I doing with time? I need to check. I'm doing okay? Good. So 2 examples. This in Tanzania and this Liberia enterprises. Overall, what we've seen after about 5 years since we started, about 4 years since we have been making investments. The last 3 years, there's been a significant, I would say, increase in sales of revenues of the enterprises we support, 45% last year. Year by year. Year by year. That's average. And then another key important indicator for us, in addition to revenues, is how many poor people are managing, or farmers are managing, to connect to these enterprises, suppliers, and that has increased as well to almost 30,000 farmers, a significant increase from 3 years back as well. These are all people that now get access to markets when they couldn't get access to markets before. And very important to us, about 37% of them are women. This is a significant achievement. It might look small, but many of the enterprises that source from poor farmers in poor countries, it's mainly men that actually take the product to the cooperative. They get the income and then they decide how to spend it. And we've made a significant effort in trying to bring women to the supply chains, but not only to the supply chain, also in management positions, directorship at the enterprise, and other positions as well. We've disbursed about $1.2 million in the last 4 years. About a quarter of that has been repaid, and the rest is still with the enterprises. We've provisioned about 20% of that, which might not come back, but it has been rescheduled. One key lesson that we've had, actually, a lot of these enterprises need to maintain the finance to continue growing. And it's very difficult to know what time you actually ask for the repayment. Plus, there's been some which have faced challenges as well. When we are asked, are you doing well or not, what we want to see is actually as many enterprises as possible becoming profitable. That's a key. We will be pleased if a large percentage of the enterprises we support have become profitable and can stand on their feet. About 5 of them are profitable now, 3 are not, and 7 are still in the middle. Despite the increase in sales, which we mentioned before, if your starting sales is $20,000 or $50,000, and that's how the levels that some of these enterprises we start working with, even with that increase in sales, that doesn't take you to a $1 million business in 2 years. And if you get to $100,000 or $200,000 sales, what margins you might have, 20, 25%? What does that leave for you to pay an accountant, a marketing manager? It's difficult to be in a small enterprise and have a full team, so you have to really grow much faster, and that's why we're supporting enterprises to grow even faster. Some of the lessons, many lessons for us have been about managing the program as a whole. A key innovation, as I mentioned before, is that we don't want just to provide grants, we want to invest in this enterprise. And that has been a transformation for Oxfam, because we now stick with these businesses for longer, and we really want them to succeed, partly because our investment is sitting there, and we want to see it coming back. So it's really a change, cultural change in Oxfam. But also it's a change for the organizations that are used to Oxfam going there and helping them and giving them moral support and giving them a grant and then coming back after a few years asking questions. Now having Oxfam come and ask all these much tougher questions about the business, and even 5 years later, still asking them, what are your sales? And it's really a change for them as well. And that's really what you need to do to really be able to support enterprises, I believe, to really stick with them and provide an investment and stay close to the business. We've had to dedicate more resources to manage the program as a whole. I really feel quite bad about that, because I wish most of our resources went to the enterprises themselves. But to be able to have a good understanding of the market they're in and how to best help them, that means that you need to have a team that is really close to the business and can do that. We've learned a lot about how to do feasibility better. we now have very refined financial models that look at every single little line margin, and we do sensitivity analysis, all these things. But it is important because things can go wrong. And if you have planned for what can happen in your business and looked at the implications financially, that will be critical. So we might go much deeper in the financial analysis, but also in the social and the environmental analysis as well. A lot of the enterprises in 2010 we were supporting were either underwater or having no rain or too much rain, or had suffered an earthquake in Haiti and Indonesia, for example. So understanding the risks, climatic, not climatic risks, is important for us as an investor and for the enterprise themselves. Mentoring, I mentioned, is critical. Working with local experts, but also international experts. I call it a critical friend. Many businesses need that critical friend, but they can't be too critical. Sorry, they can't be too critical, exactly. They have to be constructive and really help you, but they can't be too friendly either. That's one thing we face, that, you hire some local mentors, and because they believe in the business, they lose some sense of independence to be able to really say this is not working well. And that's important, a critical friend. And sometimes we use international experts as well to provide that business experience. Projections, one thing I'd say, I've almost run out of excuses every time I have to go back to my investors and say, oh, sorry, we haven't reached $1 million here, $500,000 there. It's a bit sometimes easy to put very big numbers. And that really doesn't do good to the programs or the enterprises themselves. Our enterprise in Philippines was proposing to do $1 million sales after 3 years. They did $4,000 sales after 2.5. So from 4,000 to 1 million, a long way to go. Had we said that it would take 2 years to develop the product, we would today have a success story. And instead, we have quite what's a failure. We're working with it to make it work better. For the enterprises themselves, again, you all know a lot. I'll just share some of our experience. It's critical to have leadership, and that comes in the Innovation Against Poverty papers as well. Leadership and management capacity. Our investment committee always says, who is the person that cannot sleep? That person that really feels so passionate about the business, they'll do everything and anything to make it happen. And that sort of leadership you need. In some of the rural, remote places where we go, we have the passionate leaders, but then they don't necessarily have the management skills. How do you learn when you need to recruit new people in? How do you make sure that person really works well with the farmers or with the community where they work? That is a critical challenge. The Wood Istanbuli in a New Farm company in Palestine was really the person that set this enterprise together, which is a fascinating business. He realized that it was maybe time for him to go and let someone else come in, maybe provide some new leadership and also provide management skills, which he didn't have. He had the skills to really set the business up. Testing new technologies is critical. We all know the importance of innovation in technology, not only in technologies, in other forms of innovation as well. Our experience is that that can be quite difficult sometimes. We're setting up factories in the middle of nowhere, the machines never come, and sometimes, it would have been better to pay a lot more money to get a good professional engineer to do it and really get it sorted in 3 months rather than 2 years later still fixing cables ourselves in the evenings. So dedicate the time to really have the competent experts to do a good project planning, but also to provide the engineering skills and others. It's very difficult as well to know for little companies where we are, whether they can start their own brand or they should be selling through local existing bigger players. In Colombia, for example, let me give you another example. In Sri Lanka, they believe that they can sell chocolate-flavored fresh milk in North Sri Lanka, and that they will be able to compete with Nestle's and other chocolate-flavored milks as well. Can they do it? Well, I probably think they can. I think they can. I think there is a room for new products that are locally manufactured in these markets. But sometimes the challenges of trying to develop such a sophisticated product are not with the branding necessarily, but quality, productivity, and these things you might maybe more easily get by actually concentrating on getting higher yields for your product, your milk in this case, getting your process right, getting a good business running, and selling through a company that has done all of the other things before. Like they know how to manufacture electricity cars, they know how to market, etc. And when you're ready and have a business that is really competitive, maybe move on to develop a branded product to compete with others. The answers depend from one country to the other. In some countries, there is a space for a locally new branded product to compete with bigger players. I talked about understanding climate risks and disasters. I talk about trying to understand the social dimensions of the business as well. I like a lot of the literature from Innovations Against Poverty about inclusive business. What is an inclusive business? And we share a similar view. How are you making opportunities for marginalized groups? And for us, it's important to include women in particular. And that means doing a deeper analysis of how the business fits with the community where it works, and then setting specific targets to really make sure that you can achieve progress in those dimensions as well. Should you get very close or not too close with government authorities and the policy debates? That's a difficult one. Do you keep quiet, or do you always go into all the meetings, government and others? It's a difficult one. In our experience, because we work in rural, remote places where there's need for investment in so many areas, we need to work very closely with government authorities and to try to understand exactly what the key priorities might be. Sometimes, like it happened in Ethiopia, national priorities might change, and they've reduced the tariffs, or actually promoted cheaper imported edible oil, which meant that our business went it wasn't competitive anymore. So sometimes policy changes can affect your business, but I think having a good understanding of what the key priorities in the government and local authority is important for any business. I'll say two more things and then I'm done. My family are accountants, so they'll feel proud of me saying that actually accounting is critical for any business. It doesn't really instill a lot of confidence in a business that is not able to really provide transparent data of how well they're doing, and it's a better conversation to have. That is critical. I was thinking about this is actually it, really, but one last thing I wanted to say. I was thinking about innovation in this program. I think it's innovative because of the fact that Oxfam is investing for the first time, and the fact that we're inviting philanthropists who sit along with us and decide what businesses to select and provide the skills, and we work with international mentors and others. A lot of the enterprises are innovative in different ways. Again, in your literature at your program, you say innovation is not just about invention. I really share that. Sometimes you need products which are a new product, and we're producing beehives like no one has ever seen them before in eastern Ethiopia, and we provide a new variety of seeds, vegetable seeds that we don't have in Nepal. Yes, that is important as well. Sometimes innovation comes in the processes, in new technologies you use in the processing of the same product, or in taking on a challenge, identifying a market opportunity and bringing a product that might be there in other places but not in that particular place. But also, like you say in your documentation, a lot of innovation comes from partnerships that you set up with different stakeholders, and adjusting your business model to do same things that others might be doing but a bit differently. Like in Nepal, for example, the most innovative element of our investment there is the fact that we have partnered with a bank, which is now providing lending to our enterprise, even when Oxfam pulls out. But actually, they're now partnering. That partnership is delivering actually scale, because that same bank is wanting to go to other enterprises. Or in the case of Tanzania that I mentioned before, partnering with a company that has some skills, or we've even set up a stakeholder forum where different people come together and share their practices. So different forms of innovation, so different contexts. I think that's it. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I look forward to your questions.
You can still stay on stage if there are more questions. I thought that was really, really interesting. There were lots of insights, and it's good we have your presentation online as well, because I kept taking lots of notes. A couple of things that I took away from that was when you said this $1 invested, it's $1 in grants. I thought that's really worth thinking about. And also what you said about it does not reduce poverty by default, but by design. And that's something to think really hard about. What are those additional services? The reduction of poverty is the intention, but it doesn't come automatically. And finally, what you said about bringing on experts and to really invest in quality. I guess that's what it means to make it work, but also be concerned about the right sort of quality in what we're trying to deliver to on these markets. I had just one or two questions that came up when I listened to this. One was when you referred back to understand the barriers what that women face, for example. Trying to understand that, do you mean that's a task for Oxfam, or is that something you would expect the SMEs to do?
Well, yes, we do expect enterprises to commit to an agenda of gender justice and improving economic opportunities for women. And that might mean, reviewing their policies to make sure that, their recruitment process is fair and really they try to recruit women when they have the skills. They can go a bit further as well, but sometimes Oxfam accompanies them in that going a bit further. For example, if you are based in a rural area, why may or may not women come to bring their product to you? That might mean actually going to the communities and interviewing lots of women and trying to understand what the issues are, or maybe just a few women understanding what the issues are. What might result from that is then a particular project that might need to sit alongside the enterprise, where the enterprise plays a role, but someone else helps them. For example, a thing that we do quite often in many of these places is we have to talk to many husbands about actually allowing their women to come to the enterprise to sell their product. Could the enterprise do that? Yeah, they can do that. Every time a husband comes, they say, who else works in the business and, what's happening. But it might be that actually you need to specialize staff with the psychological skills or social mobilization skills to work alongside the company to tackle some of those barriers that you have understood better.
And you said, well, sometimes you have to make the tough decision to maybe pull out and stop your investments. And that must be a really difficult thing to do. And how do you do it then? Because if it's about the livelihoods of farmers, it's a tricky situation. Yeah,
that's a difficult one indeed. I mean, we found an answer to that within the Oxfam program. Well, we don't call it an exit, we call it a return to programs. Sounds to me like the Elvis Presley song. It's like return to programs. Basically, some farmers or some enterprises might need another sort of support in an area that's actually going to have a lot of risk to earthquakes or others. Maybe the support they need is a different sort of disaster risk preparedness, for example. So there'll be an Oxfam program that can help them with that. But if there's no point in setting up a business, then there's no point in setting up a business. So we will help the farmers diversify into something else or prepare against other risks.
For some preparation time for,
Yeah, we try to do responsible exit and then bring in other elements of Oxfam that can help them with other areas that are important.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Yes. I will hand you the microphone though, so everyone can hear you. And say your name.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Philippa Bergen. Thank you for an excellent presentation. I had a question I had a big question. You mentioned that sometimes you had to come with a lot of excuses when you tried to relate to your financial partners. So compared to like a little less radical investment, this was difficult to explain. But I wondered if you could compare what you've been doing now to more traditional aid. You said return to programs. If you compare try to quantify the effects of what you've done now, and if you had done the same thing without the investment element, which would have performed better? You had a very nice slide when you quantified number of jobs created, how much it cost, what kind of investments you did, and if you could include in your assessment the cost of your staff time? Because it's expensive to make the kind of investments that you've been doing, like you said.
We are on a journey. Oxfam set up this program as a way of learning better how to support enterprises and improve our program as a whole. So, all the work we do outside this tiny program benefits from the learning we develop inside this little program. So it's a journey for us, a fascinating one. I mean, I would say that quite often the sort of support that's needed might not be an enterprise solution. Like the farmers in Liberia, they had high risk of food insecurity. They just needed some support, NGO, public, other, to help them, improve their production level so that they could feed themselves. And so that's a livelihoods approach, and that's so important. And in other cases, other things are important as well. Now, what I would say, if you support enterprise, there's only one way of doing it, and that is doing it well. You can't do enterprise, but then don't ask for the financial information, you don't understand the markets, you don't ask who the manager is, you don't have a performance-related bonus on the manager if he or she does well. There's only one way of doing business, and that is doing it better. And I think we've learned that with Oxfam, that we've got into this world, and we're improving the way we're doing things by learning, by bringing expertise from outside. And we're not there yet. I'm sure that in 2 years' time, we will have new elements that we have brought in.
Yeah, we have another question. Front, I'll give you the microphone if you don't mind coming up. We can see you as well. Yeah, Lena Eriksson, the IAP team leader.
Thank you very much. Actually, my question comes to you not as IAP team leader, but more from my development banking background, where I share your views that there is a missing middle, a very difficult task to reach what we, when I worked for the European Investment Bank, tended to call the very small enterprises, the VSEs, really, really small but organized enterprises. One of the key issues there was to set a bar in terms of returns. Because if you are looking at other providers of these kinds of funding, they would be typically looking at commercial returns that would cover all the risks, etc. On the other hand, you have, like what we have in IAP, a term that is sort of commercially viable, but that might be something much lower. I noticed that you've put up 5%, which I wouldn't consider commercial, but still, two questions there. How did you arrive at that as a target return level? And secondly, what are you actually achieving?
Okay. There's two initiatives that Oxfam is involved in, and the one that promises 5% return to investors, that's the Impact Investment Fund, the Small Enterprise Impact Investment Fund, SIF, which I have not shared a lot about. That is a commercial vehicle, and it's run by Symbiotics, which have invested in microfinance for 20 years, and they have achieved higher than 5%, 8% a year. So they have a tremendous track record. Why they went for 5 in that one, it's a question of balancing financial and social returns. I mean, they're promising to invest in enterprises that create jobs in poor countries, and the hope is that people will accept a lower return by actually seeing some of the social benefits of their investment. Because the first 2 investments have been made in the last 3 months only, there's no evidence of how well we're doing on that 5, how well Symbiotics is doing on that 5%. But I mentioned their track record on other products in the past, which is there. In terms of the program that I manage, it's kind of a complicated mechanism, really. But to summarize, basically the returns we expect on the loans we provide are market returns. So if banks are lending at 12%, that's what the enterprise will pay, 12%. However, all these enterprises receive a lot of grants from Oxfam that reduces maybe not their interest costs, but their salaries and others. So that's how we compensate for not being, for them having to pay what's quite a significant rate, but we want to bring them into the commercial economy, and that's the way we think we should do it.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one last question, if anyone. Jack.
Thanks very much. My name's Jack Newnham. I'm another member, I'm afraid, of the Innovations Against Poverty team. Fascinating presentation. Thanks very much. I guess just from an IAP angle more, particularly interested in how you tackle the challenge of allocation within your programme. I was struck by seeing Chris West as one of your selection committee members. I also work with Chris on a different selection committee. I know he's very good at that, kicking the tires of projects and making sure that, as you say, you only invest in quality. I guess I'm just interested to sort of draw the contrast between IAP as a programme and the programme that you manage, because we've got a fairly infinite domain of projects we can engage with. I mean, not quite infinite, but least developed countries, and so we can pick from many in terms of our allocation challenge. And I'm just wondering how you deal with it in terms of your allocation challenge, because I'm assuming you have a slightly smaller pool, and when you talk about returning to programs and things like that, how do you ensure quality within the pool that you've got to choose from, and maybe what could we learn from your experience on that through the IAP program? Thanks.
Yeah. Well, one way of ensuring quality is through a good filtering process with, we now have independent visits to every new project we might invest in, so that's we have a thorough due diligence process. So that's the package that's there to make sure that we select the best enterprise possible within our investment criteria, of course. Then once enterprises are in, the way we've learned to work is actually we make our allocations conditional to particular milestones being achieved. So we might have an approved, $100,000 investment, but in the first year we will be paying for certain things only. And if things are not happening, then that money is not deployed unless there's a good reason why things were not achieved. And if we don't sense that there is enough energy in the enterprise or in the market, then that companies return to programs. And then what we do is we prioritize follow-on investments for the companies that are doing well or that could be doing well if a few things are adjusted. So we have both a contingency fund for companies that might need a bit more, and then we save some money on follow-on for companies that might need a bit of additional support. So they take priority over new potential investments, really. And then we try to keep a number of companies within reason. I mean, we've done 17, and that's quite a lot of work to be awake at 6 a.m. for Indonesia and go to bed at 7 p.m. for Colombia already. So, we try to locate better resources in regions and have a relative number of enterprises that you can really keep an eye on.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Hugo. That was very, very interesting. Let's give him a round of applause. And you will be with us for the rest of the day, I think. So we have a chance to ask more questions. I'd like to get that microphone back once you're detangled yourself.